Welcome. You're listening to the Keeping Ashland Healthy podcast, a podcast production of the Mental Health and Recovery Board of Ashland County, Ohio. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping Ashland Healthy. In the studio with me, the vibrant, the smiley, Dr. Ashley.
Good morning, boss. How are you?
I'm doing well. Dr. Ashley warned me that, she got a little bit of a headache.
Yeah, this is not my best day, but we're gonna do our best here on the podcast.
We are powering through.
Yes.
Our audience demands content, Dr. Ashley. We have to provide them with meaningful content. And boy, we have some pieces today I hope folks will find useful. We are going to be talking about several things. First, just as a reminder, the Mental Health and Recovery Board here in Ashland County, we're here for you, the community. Mental health, substance use issues may not be impacting you directly now, but they may, a friend, family member, or you in the future. The board's really a resource, Dr. Ashley. Folks can always call us, 419-281-3139, or, work with our provider agencies, Appleseed, Acada, and Catholic Charities. There are plenty of other options for mental health substance use services in Ashland County, but the board ensures that folks that maybe don't have insurance or are not working currently, just need help, we offer that sliding scale fee so that regardless of income, folks can get the help that they might be looking for through one of our three agencies. So,
yes. Great.
Yeah. So, we do this podcast on a regular basis because a lot of folks are busy. They need more bite-sized information about mental health substance use issues in Ashland County and in the area, and even the nation. Sometimes we do some national stories that might be, I think, useful to folks here in Ashland County. So hopefully you can listen to the podcast while you're doing other things and learn as you listen to Dr. Ashley and myself. And Dr. Ashley is in charge of our community training and education and programs and planning. She does it all here at the board. Both of us are clinicians now, working more in administrative roles, but we love what we do here at the board. We're thankful to bring you this podcast, and thank you. I always appreciate the listeners and the kind comments that we receive, and the nasty ones. I just delete those, Dr. Ashley.
Yeah, so. That's funny.
First up, and this one, all of these things are I find interesting. I hope the audience does as well. An article by Richard Sears, S-E-A-R-S. It was posted on the Mad America site, which they are a friend of the show. Why our beliefs about mental illness are making stigma worse. And that really struck me, Dr. Ashley, because so much of what the board has tried to do over the last 20 plus years is emphasize the importance on how we talk about things in the language that we use when we talk about things, particularly mental health and substance use disorders.
Absolutely. Big focus for the board.
Yeah. So any article I see that really kind of helps bring that out or affirm what the board's been doing always draws my eye. So in this particular piece, Mr. Sears talks about stigma as it relates to how we talk about mental health and substance use disorders. And again, as we've said before, the way we talk about, for example, if we talk about someone struggling maybe with a loss or a difficult situation in their life, in terms of using medical language or jargon like chemical imbalances, brain disease, illness, disorder, all those kinds of loaded terms actually increase stigma. And that's what this study found. But when we frame it more in terms of challenges related to political or economic instability, stigma goes down. Imagine that. So I think all of us can relate and say, listen, I'm struggling. I just lost my job, or I'm in between jobs, or I was laid off, or, I'm in a situation maybe overseas where there's political instability and I'm leaving and trying to get reoriented. So depending on how we frame the challenges we're going through, it seems like folks relate a lot better. Yeah. But when stigma goes down, but when we make the the person more like the other, using the medical jargon, stigma goes up. At least that's what this piece found.
I think even, so they're talking at a socio-political level, but even at a community level or at an interpersonal level, talking about, we're human and we have a difficult time.
Yes.
We go through struggles,
Yeah.
and that affects us. I think that helps a lot, normalizing.
I'm glad you said that, because Dr. Ashley, we do a lot of trainings together, and we do a lot of suicide prevention trainings, our QPR training, which we offer to anybody in the community at no charge. You always make a point of that, Dr. Ashley, and I think that makes sense. During that presentation, you talk about, if you're helping somebody that's struggling, you don't have to be an expert, because guess what? You're a human being, and you've struggled as a human being. So you can relate on that level, because we all struggle.
I always say that. I say, even if you've never had a suicidal thought on your own, you can understand what it's like to have a hard time, right? And you can then empathize with that person. So I think that's important, and it's kind of the same thing as this.
It is, and basically, and again, we like to summarize things here, because the audience is their toleration. This is not the Rogan show. We're not going to go 3 hours, right? So,
oh gosh, no.
Right. Well, at least not yet. Maybe one day, Dr. Ashley. But we need comfier chairs for that.
For sure.
But the findings in this particular piece suggest that, if we really want to start to combat stigma, we just need to challenge perhaps that psychiatry's dominant model, which is that medical model, and challenge some of those narratives, like we have been doing here in Ashland County, of chemical imbalances, illness, disorder. I always encourage folks to read the board's 3 Legs of the Stool. We call it Our Human Community. It's a document that it's on our website, which all this will be linked in the episode description. We talk about the importance of language and words and all these concepts. So again, the board's been on this for some time, but the research continues to come out that supports that focus and that emphasis. So
I love that. This article was February 18th this year, so it is very current.
We do try to provide our audience with the current cutting edge.
We were ahead of the game at the board, really, on this stuff.
We were. And again, so much of that goes out to my mentor and former director, Steve Stone, and I. We both came to these convictions almost 30 years ago now, Dr. Ashley. I hate to admit, I started when I was 12, so obviously I'm 40,
right.
Only 42 now.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, we came to those convictions a long time ago from other folks like us that were just dissatisfied with the way the system was headed. Yet I think our instincts and what we read and the researchers at that time have proven to be accurate. So
I think
doesn't mean
great.
that we still don't have an uphill battle with trying to change narratives, but I think we are definitely headed in the right direction and feel good about that. So
yes.
The next piece that I want to draw to folks' attention, again, we'll link all of this in the episode description, so I don't want you to worry about trying to take notes while you're driving or exercising, walking, doing other things. So this will all be linked. The next piece was on psychiatric drug approvals questioned by researchers. And this was a piece by Peter Simons, and again at Mad in America, but psychiatric drug approvals, this really started to come to light as the COVID pandemic drew to an end in particular, and the role of the FDA. I think it was called Project Warp Speed was the name of trying to get the various vaccines for COVID, and that was a lot of energy by some of the pharmaceutical companies to develop something and get it through the FDA. This isn't specific to the COVID vaccines, but it is specific to psychiatric medications, and really took a hard look at the FDA in their approval process. And trigger warning for the audience: this piece suggests that the FDA has loosened kind of the approval standards to such a degree that, for example, some of the studies they looked at, somebody trying to get a drug, psychiatric drug now through the FDA process, the approval process, they might do, say, 6 studies. In 5 of the studies, the outcome is the drug doesn't beat placebo. In 1 it does, and that will be sufficient to get it through the process.
Yeah.
So obviously, for a lot of people, I would think that doesn't make sense.
It's a pretty low bar, I think. Yeah.
So, when we say, what kind of evidence are we really talking about? And so I appreciated the piece because it really starts to draw attention, because let's face it, most of us don't follow the FDA on a regular basis. And there's a high degree, I think, of trust for a lot of folks in the general public that if the FDA says it's approved, it must work.
Right.
One of the things we've questioned over the years is we can't just accept everything. There is such a thing as good, reputable science, and then sometimes there's fast and loose science. An example of that, in my opinion, is, if you've got a bunch of studies, more studies than not, that say this particular substance doesn't beat placebo, and then to approve it, to say it works without the general public knowing those other studies, which they almost never know unless you really dig into it. You're going to, again, not have the kind of informed consent that this board and you and I are both so passionate about. And what I mean by that fancy term, informed consent, is whether it's psychiatric medications or even primary health, any kind of medication or treatment suggestion, you have a right to know as much information before you make a decision as is available, reasonably available. And things like this, to me, matter. So I think folks need to know, well, it didn't really beat placebo in 5 or 6 studies, but there's 1 or 2 it did, so it got approved on that basis.
Well, I think, because if a doctor's prescribing you a medicine, you do have some, confidence in their judgment in prescribing it to you, right? You trust them in doing that. And if you don't know this information, why would you question it? So that's kind of scary, honestly.
It is, and it goes to, one of our underlying themes has been to be careful, cautious, ask questions. When people, we run into them at a lot of events, whether it's our fairs or our trainings. I have these conversations with folks, and I'm trying to encourage them to ask these questions of the people that they're seeing in our system, whether it's one of our contract providers or anybody that they're seeing. Asking these critical questions is their right, and they should do that. I want them not to feel strange about that. And what do we say, Dr. Ashley? If you feel uncomfortable maybe asking these questions of an MD or a PhD or a counselor or a licensed person, take somebody with you.
Absolutely.
Have an advocate, a support person. If that's what's going to help you ask these questions, your health matters, and you deserve to get answers.
Yeah, deserve it.
Yep. So kind of the bottom line from Mr. Simons on this was the quality of evidence supporting psychiatric drug approvals varied substantially in the studies that they looked at, underscoring the need for increased clarity and consistent application of FDA approval standards among drugs treating mental illnesses, unquote. Again, we'll link to that piece in the research that was behind it. But we need to make sure if we have standards, and the standards, need to be set at a level that is robust. So the standard can't be if 1 out of 10 studies beats placebo, good enough, right? So we would like to think a majority should beat placebo.
Yeah.
So, and then are the standards then being enforced the way they're set up? And
then I think having some accessibility to that information for the public, I think that would be also kind of taking that a step further. We should know, if it's really not been, validly researched or reliably researched.
Well, I don't know, Dr. Asher. Have you ever picked up prescription medications and they put in that paperwork?
The thing you throw away?
Yep.
Yeah.
Dr. Asher.
I'm just saying, a lot of people don't even unfold that.
Well, it is 8 font, so it's hard to read. It's a lot. So I don't know if some of this information is in there or not, but
I don't think that the studies from it'll say FDA approval, but it doesn't warn you that 1 out of 5,
right, exactly.
Actually had positive benefits or something,
right?
So they have side effects and things.
I am with you. Maybe we'll see some changes coming at the FDA. Obviously, we've had an election recently. There's been a lot of changes in leadership positions, so perhaps that'll be something. We'll keep an eye on that, and we'll bring that to the audience if we actually start to see some changes at the FDA. Excuse me. My last piece is from our good friend, Brooke Seam. And again, I'll remind the audience, Brooke is our keynote speaker at this year's RSVP conference, which is coming up in just a few weeks, March 26th. That will be at Ashland University at the Convocation Center. Brooke is the author of May Cause Side Effects, and she blogs pretty regularly and posts pieces that I follow. And her latest piece was interesting. One of the things, I don't want to spoil it for those that are going to sign up, because you got to register, because we only have a limited amount of in-person spots still left. It's filling up quick. And we have plenty of Zoom options because it's a hybrid conference. So we will be doing a live Zoom. But if you want to be there in person and get the soup, you need to register quick. But one of the things I really like about Brooke is she's so honest, whether it's in her book or any of her blog articles, about some of the developmental impacts to her of starting medications at 15 and being on them for about 15 years. So, and in her most recent blog, and again, we'll link to it, she talks about decision making and doubt and having patience and being unsure and struggling through the decision-making process. The title of it was On Choosing Thought and Not Deciding Failure in Advance. So as Brooke is doing a lot of work across the country on spreading the word about tapering from psychiatric medications and side effects of medications and everything that she's gone through, she's wrestling with maybe decisions that she's making in her 40s that maybe other people have made in their 20s, right? She feels like she's just had some delays in tackling some of these issues, and some of that is due to the medications, and it's it really does impact the developmental process for a lot of folks. But one of the things she emphasizes in there is, the same set of facts and circumstances can look really different if we frame it and we tell ourselves a different story around the same set of facts, right? And we know that, and this goes back to the other piece we had earlier about how the words we use. So Brooke really brings out, it's important how we frame things. So the difficult time we might be going through, we can frame it as all negative, all difficult, but we also can frame it as, how is this helping me and setting me up to be successful in future challenges going forward?
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. So her framing and how personal she relates in her blogs, I think could be helpful to our listeners and to other folks in general.
Oh, yeah. I think that's kind of the beauty of having Brooke as our speaker. I mean, she has, her own personal experiences that she's sharing about. And I think there's value to that. She's speaking from a place of she really does get it. So I really like that.
Yeah, she ended the blog by just encouraging us to remember that there's power in waiting and not rushing to make a decision, right? And she talks about, even though that might be the hard thing, maybe that's the wise thing sometimes, is the power in waiting. And timing is everything, I think.
That's it. That might be hard for some of us to do, but I like it.
Yep. And again, before we move on to the next piece, I will say, if folks are following Brooke on Instagram or other platforms, I know she's got a new post on Instagram where she talks through more about how she's trying to get the word and the messaging out there. And I feel this too, Dr. Ashley, since I've been doing this a bit longer than Brooke. Sometimes it feels like we can say the same things. I've been saying the same things for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel like the system, this huge system, it's not changing that much, but it really is. It's just, you have to look for it, but there's still a long way to go. And it does take sometimes a long time to change these big systems because we're not doing it in a vacuum. There are other folks that have bigger megaphones and a lot more resources than the Ashland board saying the total opposite and saying, don't listen to those guys.
Very true.
So it is a challenge. And I understand sometimes folks get a little frustrated with the pace of progress, but I'm still optimistic. And one of the things I think Brooke points out is, as she's pushing for, more education and change of systems, I think you have to do that in a way that's also personally meaningful.
Absolutely.
To the person doing the work.
And I will say, too, just to add to that, I think the work that you're doing here and at the state level, I think that really makes a difference, too. And people might or might not know that David is really an advocate in our system. And I think, that work is super important. I'm thankful that you're doing it and that I get to learn from you.
Well, I appreciate that.
But that's the work that we continue to do. But I think that it is even in my time here, I've seen that it's making a difference.
Well, I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah.
The board, before I was brought on as executive director, I tried to be as honest as I could with the board. And again, most of them knew me for many, many years.
Yeah.
They know my passion. I work for them. I obviously never want to put them or say anything or do anything that doesn't redound to them in a positive way, and that I'm furthering the mission that they've set me on. Mm-hmm. But they've always been very supportive of what we're trying to do here, which is not accept some of those kind of conventional medical model themes. And that's why I love working here. As you know, it's a very special board. Ashland County is very special in that we're constantly looking out, hopefully for the best interest of the folks that receive services in our system. But thank you for saying that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, last but not least, you had come across a great resource, and this is a local issue that is impacting. We've heard it from our prevention gals. We've heard it from our superintendents, our schools, our liaisons, and it has to do with vaping and e-cigarettes.
Yeah. So you might be wondering, what is vaping, first of all?
What is it?
So it's when you use a handheld electronic device to breathe a mist or vapor into your lungs. An e-cigarette, vape pen, or other electronic nicotine delivery system heats a liquid of nicotine, flavoring, and then some other stuff, additives they call it, and you inhale it through a mouthpiece.
Right, so it's super safe then.
People think because it's vape, they're like, oh, it's just vapor. It's not as bad as smoke.
It's just water vapor.
Right.
Dr. Ashley.
Yeah, that's what they think. Like, so they're comparing that to a smoke, to like cigarette smoke.
Yep, saying
that
but this is not true.
Right. So it actually, we don't know the long-term damage of vaping yet because it's not been around long enough to know that.
Sure.
But we do know that it can be as dangerous as smoking cigarettes.
Right.
And also there's a lot of research saying that people who start, or young people who start vaping, they eventually turn to cigarettes. So it's like a gateway to cigarettes.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. And we are seeing a lot more locally vape shops popping up. So I thought this was important to talk about.
No, I'm glad you reference it. And again, we'll link to this website, which had resources, I thought, for 3 important groups of people. It had resources for parents, and then teens and schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So education, and then resources if you are seeing, or you have a child maybe that is using e-cigarettes. Kind of what to do. I like that. Mm-hmm. And also the risks and benefits of vaping, if there are any benefits.
I'm not sure it talked about any benefits.
Well, I think they just say like people think that it's safer, but really it's not.
Yep.
Some of the problems caused by vaping can be asthma, permanent lung scarring, like that's pretty serious, organ damage, addiction. So nicotine, there is nicotine in vapes. And so people sometimes think because it's not a cigarette, it's not addictive, but it actually is in the same way as cigarettes.
Yeah.
Secondhand exposure, we don't hear a lot about that, but it's the same as with cigarettes. Secondhand vape can impact your health as well, just like secondhand smoke.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know if you've ever been behind somebody in their vehicle that's vaping.
Yeah.
And sometimes they blow the vape out the window, and it's like this huge
like cloud. Yeah. It's crazy.
I'm thinking that can't be good.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you ever smelled vape?
Not really, to be honest with you. I'm not around a lot of vapors.
Yeah, I mean, it's been increasing for me. I've been around some, and it actually smells good. Ooh. So, like, I get the appeal to it. It doesn't stink like cigarettes, you know. A lot of times it's cotton candy or strawberry flavored.
Well, and my Glade plug-in smells good, but everybody tells me that's bad for me too.
Oh, I hear that. Yeah. But so I think that's a good point because I know Brennan, my son, he was talking about he would never smoke because of how it smells. It smells terrible. Well, there's not that kind of barrier to e-cigarettes.
Interesting,
so that is an interesting thing.
Yeah, I'm sure that was done intentionally by the folks that manufactured
It's more appealing. Yeah, yes. And you can take it in places and it's not detectable like smoke.
Interesting.
Also, explosions. I guess they can explode and cause
the actual
injury.
devices themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then some ingredients in e-liquids are known to cause cancer.
Wow.
So a lot of concerning effects, and we don't even know all of them yet.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I liked, some of the, I'll give the audience maybe some examples of the questions. for like parents, they say, are e-cigarettes less harmful than regular cigarettes? How bad is the e-cigarette epidemic? And for teens, it basic questions. What are they? Are they less harmful? What's the deal with the flavored versus what are the health risks? And then for schools, they talk about, again, impact on teens. What should schools do to protect their students? So I thought very practical subsections within each of those parents, teens, and schools major sections. So could be a good resource.
Yeah.
And www.long.org / quit smoking e-cigarettes, but I'll link to all that.
Yeah, we'll have a link. So if you're interested, please check that out.
Very good. Very good. Well, again, 4 different pieces of content we thought might be useful to folks in the county. And as always, Dr. Ashley, I appreciate you doing this with me. Yeah. And again, we have said before, if audience members have particular topics that they are interested in
let us know.
Discussing, contact us at the 419-281-3139 or over through our website. We've got an general email box that folks can access as well. All that'll be in the episode description. And again, for folks that are listening, we thank you, Dr. Ashley, and I'll be back with you regularly with more content. Thank you, Dr. Ashley.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Keeping Ashland Healthy podcast. The podcast is a production of the Mental Health and Recovery Board of Ashland County, Ohio. You can reach the board by calling 419-281-3139. Please remember that the board funds a local 24/7 crisis line through Appleseed Community Mental Health Center. It can be reached by calling 419-289-6111. That's 419-289-6111. Until next time, please join us in Keeping Ashland Healthy.